Not will you be back next year, but what is the likelihood you'll be back next year?
Oh, you put a different spin on it this time. We're very hopeful to be back here in the future. We've said this time and time again that, if you look at the evolution of our sport over the past 5 or 6 years, right? And we went through a bit of a transition in leadership. We have Steve Phelps and Jim kind of, at the helm. And we've been bold and we've been innovative. We've done things like races in downtown Los Angeles and building a temporary stadium there. First ever street race in our sports history in downtown Chicago. And this was the next milestone moment for us, is bringing a race internationally. And I can tell you, we're very bold about continuing to bring our NASCAR Cup Series internationally. Mexico is a great place to do it. This weekend is a great example of that. And I would say we're very hopeful to be here, long term.
Looking at this, as you put together the schedule for next year, some of the teams mentioned that they would like or prefer maybe like an off week either before or after. Is that feasible though? Kind of looking at how things have already fallen with the Daytona 500 announcement, and we know when Homestead's going to be next year. It doesn't seem like that's realistic.
It's possible. We've spoken about it quite a bit. For this first year, it made the most sense just being in June. Having a new broadcast partner with Amazon Prime, they're really excited about having the Mexico City race. As we talk about, potential opportunities in the future, I think to your point, having it located adjacent to an off week would help quite a bit from a travel perspective. The challenge is we don't have many off weeks. We have a couple off weeks. So we do have some options, and we are looking at those options. Ideally, if we do come back, it would be around an off week, but still have some work to do on the 26th schedule.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Ben, in looking at the future for this event, typically when you guys do new events, you don't do one and dones. So when you are at this point non-committal, I think is a fair way to describe it, for next year, why would this be potentially a one and done as opposed to like a 2 or 3 year thing, which is kind of what you guys have typically done to kind of try to build an audience and then kind of see where it goes and then maybe look at going somewhere else if that's the case?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of it is just as we're going through the planning of putting together the pieces of the 2026 schedule, there are a lot of dominoes that need to fall, and every domino affects another domino as we start to stitch a schedule together. So, this is a new event. Every time we do a first year event, think about LA, think about Chicago, we learn so many things. We've learned a ton throughout the past, I don't know what it's been, 9 or 10 months since we announced this event. OCESA has learned a ton, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to do a deep dive in postmortem. But our hope is for this to be a mainstay on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, and for us to return here in the future.
Ben, you referenced the 90% of the crowd from Mexico for the event, and 44% from Mexico City. So what was the attendance for today's race? What was your attendance for the weekend then?
I don't have the exact figures on that yet, but we'll take a look at it after this weekend.
Bob Parker's Fox Sports. To follow up on that, did the attendance match your expectations or your projections?
Yeah, we were happy with it. The stadium section was packed. The front stretch looked really good. Turn 1, there were a ton of avid fans that were in the Turn 1 area. And, it was great. And, I think what's just as important to us as the amount of people is the fact that there were, avid fans that were here, there were casual fans that were here, and there were a ton of new fans that had never been to a NASCAR race. And we talk about this a lot of times when we go to new events. Take Chicago and LA as an example, 70 and 80 roughly % that came to both of those events for the first year. And every time we have one of those events, we hear back from our fans, and they're continuing to tune in events or continuing to buy tickets, and that's important to us. We had a lot of new fans that came out this weekend. Hopefully they found a new favorite driver. I think a lot of them are now Daniel Suarez fans if they weren't before, and hopefully they'll continue to tune in to Pocono in the rest of the season.
And you were talking about fitting it in the schedule, but is there any? Do you have to look at the economics of this event, either from your end, or does OCESA have to look at economics from their end to see if you want to do it next year, or do you feel like whatever your budget projections were, you've met them and that's not an issue?
I would say, as we look at any decision that we make on the schedule, we're always considering a handful of variables, right? And that's probably one of them on both our side and OCESA's. I would say for us, this is more of a strategic move as a sport to expand our footprint globally and internationally and to a new massive fan base. I mean, just being in a country with 90 million people and over 20 million people in the larger Mexico City metro alone, that in and of itself is a success. And you guys probably came in, you got to drive around town, see the billboards, see all the activations that OCESA did. That is a success for us. So I would say, in my opinion, that carries a lot more weight than the economics or financials of the event. Sure, it is a variable that we consider, but strategically, it's more important that we focus on those factors as we make those decisions.
Hi, Ben. Congratulations for this event. I would like to ask you, in this moment, do you have a signed contract with Mexico for more years? And also, if not, how many years do you consider that could be a good number for establishing NASCAR Cup Series here in Mexico? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Can't get into the contract details per se. We did have a multi-year contract. We have an option to extend, and we'll make a decision here in the next month or two.
After what you saw all of this weekend, this inaugural event and the return of Xfinity Series after almost 20 years, what's the main factor refrains you from saying, yes, give it a go and say, yes, we're going to go back 2026? What's the main factor you consider right now is the thing that refrains you from saying, okay, we're going to go back? Obviously, I know the schedule, you guys kind of, shape the schedule at the end of the year, and it's early, but, well, as of right now.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question for sure. As I mentioned, we're working on planning out the 2026 schedule, and typically a lot of events, especially the second or third year events, will come all together when we make the 2026 schedule announcement. So more than likely we'll hold it until then. But like I said, a lot of it is we just want to rehuddle internally, want to rehuddle with our partners, and talk about what the future might potentially look like. So we have so many new things that we've learned, so many great things that happened this weekend. And we have a survey that's going to go out to the fans. I'm excited to see what their response is to this weekend, and very hopeful that we'll return in the future.
If you come back next year, what will be the biggest challenge? Or I don't know if maybe you already considered to do something differently?
The biggest challenge, I don't know. I mean, I would like to pinpoint something, but honestly, I hate to say it, it gets a lot easier in the second and third years usually for us, especially for a unique kind of event. Like, I think back to Chicago. I mean, there were so many questions and uncertainties going into it. We didn't know what the courses would be like. We had never set up a temporary course before. The second and third year, they're still difficult. They were a lot easier than they were the first. What I would say is that if we do come back in the future, we want to partner up with OCESA, but we want to partner up with local organizations and communities to have a 365 presence. We have the Mexico Series down here. They have been great for us. I think it's been great having a series that has a home and roots here. And we've had success with it, right? You got to see them participate on Friday and Saturday. And I'm confident a lot of the drivers that were competing in those races, we'll see on Saturday in the Xfinity Series. We'll see maybe Friday in the Truck Series at a lot of our races. And like Daniel, we'll see him in the NASCAR Cup Series. So I also think that's a testament to what we've built internationally is not only is it an opportunity for us to get exposure for NASCAR globally, but it's a pipeline for drivers, for team owners, for partners to come up into the National Series. And we've seen some success stories. So we want to really partner up and have opportunities for us to be in front of fans here 365 throughout the year. And we're not going to be able to have a cup race here every single weekend, but there are other ways that we can be more engaged in the community, and that's what we're excited about.